everybody in our sector. For those who don't know me, my name is Alan Presland. I'm the CEO of Parenta. I've been in the sector longer than I care to think, 25 years, I believe it is. I'm also the author of this book, which I'm very excited about, Improving the Business of Childcare. It was published in 2016, I think, 2016 or 2017, and went to #1 on Amazon in the preschool sector. So if anybody wants a copy of that, if you reach out, we'll send you a copy after this call. We can't, unfortunately, send you a physical copy because we keep them at our office, which has been shut down for a year. But we will gladly send you a soft copy through email. Just put a note in the chat room and we'll send it off to you. Today's event's slightly different than the ones we've been running for the last year or so. For those who haven't been, we've run events for the last year every single month where we've had a couple of speakers come in and give some feedback on various subjects that they've asked us to talk about. Today's very, very different. Today's what we've called a coffee morning. And we've asked a number of you to send in some items that you would like to have discussed. And I'll talk through that agenda very shortly. But today's very much about everybody being involved on the call and being able to air their views and to talk through some of the issues which are, shall we say, frustrating them, or perhaps they need some clarity on. And we very much look forward to that. Obviously, we don't really know how this is going to go. We haven't run an event where effectively we're going to have open questions. So it might be absolutely brilliant. And if it isn't, well, we'll run the old style next time. So please bear with us. We've had a huge response, a huge number of questions come in. And we've tried to group them together. And we've got, I think, 8 subjects that we've been asked to talk about today. So just running through them very quickly, we've been asked to talk about staff well-being and mental health. And obviously, mental health is a massive issue at the moment. So I think we're going to focus on that one first. Secondly, and understandably, COVID testing and vaccination. Then we're going to talk quickly about EYS framework and the changes which are forthcoming on us all. We've then been asked to talk about funding and particularly overpayments. Then we go on to maintaining relationships with parents, supporting parents who are working from home. And then if we have time, we're also talking about staff, or the difficulties in finding staff at the moment, and particularly the real cost of staff moving on. I think that's a massive issue for the sector. And Phil Ashton, who I haven't seen for about 100 years, and it's lovely to see you, Phil, also asked us to talk about insurance and business interruption. And Phil, you were the only one who asked for that, but a really important subject matter, particularly with the, I'm going to be brave and say the nonsense that's been touted around in the industry and the way that everybody's been treated by the insurance companies. So we will do our best to get to that one, Phil, but as you were the only one who asked for it, we're going to put that one towards the end, if that's okay. So starting off, we're going to talk, as I said, about staff wellbeing and mental health. And we've had 4 people ask us to talk about that. What I would say before we ask them to come on and talk is really a couple of things. Firstly, Parenta produces a huge array of documents for mental health for our learners. And, you know, our learners are inevitably people who are working in the sector. So we will be sharing all of that with you in the email that follows up this presentation. So please help yourselves to it and share it as widely as you wish to. It's copyright to us, but feel free to share it as you need to. Secondly, we also have a mental health CPD course, and we'll be sharing that for everybody as well. So again, you can share that link. And I think anything that we can do as a community to help our people at this time, particularly when we're all dealing with mental health issues, I think that's a good thing. So yeah, we'll share that as widely as we can to help everybody. But as I said, we had 4 people asking about the subject. We had Julie Ringrose, is it Sarah or Sarah, singer, Alison Reck, and Elizabeth Balfour. Would any of those just mind coming off mute and just telling us what particularly was the sense of why you felt the need to ask that question, and what you might hope to try and get out of the conversation from us today? I can't see any of those people on my screen, but I've only got access to about 16 directly in front of you. So if any of those people could join in and ask, that would be fabulous. Don't leave me hanging, otherwise it'll just be embarrassing. No? Okay, well then, does anybody else want to talk about that then? This is an open mic type event, so you just got to take yourself off mic. And if anybody'd like to just start the call on that or ask any questions they may have on dealing with well-being and mental health at this time. Children's Workshop lady, is that you saying a thumbs up? I don't know your name, I'm afraid. You just got to take your... Phil.
What I found is it was about 4 years ago, there was increasing awareness amongst everybody in the country regarding mental health and well-being. And what I found is that there was an actual dip in my staff's well-being. And we decided that we had to do something about it and really bent over backwards, it felt like, to try and improve that. And one of the ways was actually bending over backwards did improve people's mental health by the yoga. So what we found is that we offered a number of things across the board, including support and focus on staff health, not just well-being, but their health. So we focused by purchasing a cash plan for every member of staff relatively cheaply, but then we were able to explain to them the importance of taking care of themselves and the fact that it would have a financial benefit if they had a massage, if they went and took care of, I don't know, other issues, podiatry, chiropractic, and that sort of thing. What we found is it took about 2 years before there was an improvement, and it was about the staff feeling valued, and it was to do with how we changed our focus, which brought that about. It's the plan that we have that brings that about. It's called Westfield Health. Yeah, that's.
I love the. I think it's two really important things there, Phil. Feeling valued, and in the day, that's the most fundamental thing, isn't it, for all of our staff? If they feel valued, then there's a different level of engagement, and we all know what happens when you don't feel valued. One of the things which is interesting in that is Gallup. We all remember, well, those of us who are our age remember Gallup when we had to have the top 40. But Gallup is a US company, and they do analysis of staff well-being. And they have 3 categories where the staff are engaged, disengaged, or non-engaged. And what's really interesting is the analysis they do, this is across the whole populace, but the number of engaged staff is 12%, 12%. And so an engaged member of staff, as you all would know, an engaged member of staff is somebody who actively wants to make a difference. A disengaged member of staff is somebody who turns up and does what needs to be done. And then a non-engaged member of staff who's somebody who's actively trying to disrupt your business. Now, again, the stats are generic. They are not specific to our sector, but they're staggering. Something like 45% of all staff in the workforce in the UK and in the US are actively non-engaged. So they're actively trying to disrupt your work. Now, if that's the case, let's hope we're all better than that. But if that's the case, that's terrifying. As owners and managers, that's utterly terrifying. And I think that really reflects on what you've just said, Phil, then about how important it is that staff feel valued and they feel looked after and they feel loved. Lady who's called the Children's Workshop, I'm so sorry, I don't know your name, but you were waiting to say something. So please,
no,
what's your name? And,
no. I was just saying that one of my team member was just sort of saying something to them. They're coming in and they said, I'll shut the door because the noise level's going to go up. So I said, yeah, that's fine. Thumbs up. Sorry about that. No.
Don't worry. Okay. So we've got a couple of other comments coming in. Eleanor's talking about she's the wellbeing officer at setting and introduced displays and well-being treat box. And I love what she's got. I hope everybody else can see the thread here, but everybody's donated unwanted things such as gift sets, candles, perfumes, chocolates, slippers, all sorts of things for other staff. And then they nominate people for them to go to. I think that's brilliant. Where's Eleanor? Can you come off mute, Eleanor, and just tell us a bit more about that? Because I absolutely love it. That's incredible. I can't see where you are. Your mute button is bottom left. Yes, Eleanor.
Hello. Yeah, this you've introduced really, and it's just a good like self boost use of the if like managers or room leaders have noticed something that the staff are doing that's above and beyond their job role. They get nominated to go get something out of the treat box, and it's a good thing to do midweek really, to show that they're getting recognised for going above and beyond.
I love it, and what a relatively easy thing to set up. You know, it doesn't really cost anything if it's unwanted gifts and stuff. I absolutely love it, and I imagine the feedback from the rest of the troops must be really positive when that happens.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great thing that we've put in place. And I would.
Yeah, sorry, go on, Andrew. Sorry. I was just going to add to Anjuman's, we do similar stuff and it's called the Wellbeing Basket. So it's very much similar to that, and it's actually, they can help themselves with things like, you know, toiletries, and so we just put it in the toilet, and then, you know, there's all sorts of things that they can treat, like deodorants and all of those little things. And we also in the morning like biscuits and cakes, and it just cheers them up. It's just like a little trend at the moment. Everybody just brings something to cheer the team up, like baking cake. This morning one of my staff actually bought a cake, and the office manager bought the tea bags, like a PG tips, like 1,000 tea bags in there, because we're always running low. And like a couple of weeks ago, one of my other team members, she basically bought what's that called, the flowers. She bought the spring flowers to give, just a little bunch for everyone to go home with. Daffodils is beautiful. So it's just like we all kind of doing it for each other in a way, and it's just supporting the, you know, like, and we always talk to each other. So if there's anything bothering them, we just have like 5-10 minutes catch up in the morning, just to see how everyone is feeling before diving into work. I think that's really important. We make tea for each other, and then we just have a little 5 minutes catch up, nothing related to work, just to get them into the mood and swing of everything. So that really works for us.
Yeah, that's fabulous, and I really love it. I think particularly at this time of year, when, you know, people arrive at work in the dark and the wet, and they go home in the dark and the wet. It's not the easiest time of year anyway, is it? So we've talked.
I gave my staff a day off, yeah, because of COVID and everything. I gave them a day just to have for themselves, to think about their mental health and well-being, and do things for their family. I also gave them Prosecco and chocolates for Valentine's as thank you for working so hard in lockdown. And I've made staff supervisions just for well-being throughout the pandemic, because I think people really need to download sometimes. That's been really important and very helpful. But just to have a day back for yourself, to nip to M&S on your own or whatever you need to do, has been invaluable for them as well, because having their own children as well, it's been hard, because some of the children have been homeschooling and some of the staff have been working. And, you know, we've had to reduce the hours for the staff so they can actually get home in time to help their children. You know, in job share and things like that, that's been really important. You know, valuing your member of staff as a member of their own family and trying to make it work on both levels for them.
I agree. I think
can I
work is also a family, and those organisations who treat their staff as family members always seem to be able to get people to go the extra mile, and it's all about how you make people feel, isn't it? But we talked quite a bit there about physical health, and Phil suggested that mental health comes from physical health. But has anybody done anything specific for mental health at all? Just interested if anybody's done anything. You know, we've said we've got some stuff coming out and we've got CBD courses, but has anybody done anything specific? I'd love to hear anybody's done anything specific for mental health. Anyone?
Well, we haven't. I mean,
Veronica, can you just put the mic a bit closer to your mouth for me, please?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's just a little quiet.
Oh, okay. I don't know how to turn it up. So
no, you put the mic by your mouth. The mic is hanging from your headphones.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go.
That's better. Thank you.
So we do the physical things. So we do a treat a week actually. So we've just got a basket of different things. So one says hot chocolate, something says candles. So we give a treat a week at the moment. But we've had a lot of to deal with because we've been open all the way through. And one of the things that I would say is that I'm very mindful, especially on things like Facebook groups. Everyone goes on about these fantastic baskets, which are amazing. Obviously, we've all got them, but that's not the end. So the biggest thing I think we do is just be there for staff, and we have sessions where we have discussions with them, and just be observant of staff and realizing what they each individually go through. I've got one person who is homeschooling their children and having to come to work and managing that all, and just understanding what they're going through and being there for them. And I've signposted people to self-help groups and discussion groups and online stuff. And I think just being there is more important than any gifts and anything that you can give, that so that you appreciate what they're doing. A bit like in the moment planning for the children, it's kind of in the moment supervision for the staff, just being there for them and seeing them for who they are. And I don't think you can underestimate that.
I agree. And I think, you know, everybody has their own cross to bear. Everybody has their own issue at home, or whether it's health or elderly parents or homeschooling children, as you said. And you can't tar everybody with the same brush. You know, what some people need, other people need something different. But I think my own view, and I think the summation of what people are saying, is that more that people feel involved and loved and engaged, that's the one thing that sort of that changes everything. The other thing, of course, as you know, we talked about at the beginning, is training. You know, we've got this course. It's not ours. We've just bought 1 million licenses or something, and we'll just hand it out to everybody. But I think any form of training around mental health, any form of training, makes people feel involved. So I think that's always a very useful thing to be pushing for anybody. So
can I just say one thing as well, since we're on the mental health? There's a website, you know, on the NSPCC website, there's this booklet kind of thing. There's lots of information about talking about COVID, if you're worried about COVID, if you're worried about your feelings, how to deal with your children at home, how to deal with homeschooling. And I think that's a really lovely bits of information. It's something like this, I don't know if you can see it, and it's got all these lovely things that it covers. It doesn't just you know, like, you actually find out how to deal with it. It tells you how to cope with those depression, and also recognizing if you're going through depressions as well. A lot of people probably don't recognize that they are suffering or it's bothering them, and it's just a fantastic information, just so that we can give out to our staff, just so that they can deal with it themselves as well. Signposts, and it's a fantastic.
It's on the NSPCC website.
Yes, it's on the NSPC website. Yeah, NSPC.
Right. So what we'll do is
depression, anxiety, and mental health. So lovely, and it's really easy to read as well, and breaks it down. Really nice bit of information.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll get that link, and in the email that comes out at the end of the session, we'll include the link to that document so that everybody's got it.
Yeah.
And then it's just put on a thread, celebrating Mental Health Awareness Days. Every staff meeting, talk about everyone's mental health and remind staff there's always people to talk to. I couldn't agree more. And then in the day, you know, people need to know that there's people willing and able to listen. I think that's probably the most important point. But anyway, we have a somewhat packed agenda, and we've got several subjects still to go through. And the one that probably we have the most requests for is to talk about COVID testing and vaccination. And Julie Ringrose, Lisa Oakley, Colette Short, and Tracy Overton were just 4 of the people who asked us to talk about this. So any of those 4, if you're on, would you like to give us your initial thoughts on that? Mute is in the bottom left-hand corner if you need to turn your mute off. Anybody? Okay, anybody else want to talk about it?
I can add a little bit here. We put our Wimbledon site forward to be a pilot site for the borough, and to do staff testings prior to coming into work. And what we found is that it was extraordinarily burdensome. You literally could not manage it. The requirement of the standing operating procedure put in place by the borough was so burdensome that we couldn't do it. It would have taken, we would have needed to hire staff to implement it. And the timing meant it was really, really difficult. But since that point, Merton, the local borough concerned, have now basically said that they're going to be sending out more tests to be done in the way that schools are doing it, so that you can test at home, which I think is a great idea. It's really important, I think, that we show the staff that we're considering them as well as the business. So we're saying to them, you know, you can take this test, you can feel reassured, and you can come to work in confidence because everybody else is going to be tested also.
So a question that I have, because I think that the guidelines are saying that it is going to be home testing that we're having. Do you have to have written permission from staff, or do you have to have, what sort of guidelines and policies do we need in place in case we have staff that say they don't want to do the tests? I mean, where are the lines on this for, you know, a decent employer being sensitive?
It is just as you've put it. You can provide it to the staff to say, this is for you to use. We would love for you to use it. It would be better for you and better for everybody else. It's about giving confidence, certainty, all about reassurance to say this is a good thing. And if you are tested positive, it's an amazing thing that you've put yourself forward and you're now going to be, you know, self-isolating, and we will support you through that time. There's no legal right to require staff to do it. And I'm a civil libertarian at heart, so I actually believe that that's a right thing. But again, we all have to think about, you know, the sort of the greater good. And when you encourage, direct your staff, your team in that direction, I think that's the best way to go.
Good.
I've got a question. The question is that for the testing, do you have to do vaccination, or that testing you can do either?
Well, it's the testing is a separate issue really to the vaccinations. So the vaccinations are going to go ahead nationally, and you're invited in as per your local borough or your GP or the local health requirements. But in terms of the testing, they are going to be sent out. You put yourself forward, and they can send, your local health authority will send you the test kits. This isn't in stone yet. It's not final, but that's the aim. They're going to be sending them out to nursery.
I'm actually working in nursery at the moment. I don't know when I'm getting vaccination, because they haven't told me anything about my vaccination.
Sorry, the last thing you said?
Because I actually work myself as in a nursery, because I'm a nursery assistant. So I don't know when we're going to get vaccination, when all the staff and nurses are going to get vaccination, when everyone is getting vaccination.
Well, we're not in the list for it yet.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little while. They have suggested that we'll be in line with testing alongside with schools from March, I think was the suggestion, wasn't it?
Yeah, because then they're opening March, and the 8th of March, that's when most schools are opening.
But I think they were saying the testing would be, the home testing would be available to early years from March as well, is the suggestion. I haven't had any guidance over that yet.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. Sorry, I'll put my video back on. The lateral flow doesn't actually work. I had 3 members of staff who were positive, and if you've got any doubts, they must go through a drive-through or send away. The lateral flow is only 50% accurate, and it's not accurate on asymptomatic as well. I did a big research on this because I had a member of staff who got ill who wasn't anything to do with us, and I had lateral flow exactly the same that Merton has. I'm in Wandsworth. I bought it for my own self, for my staff, at great cost, and because I've got more than one setting. And they literally don't work unless you've got a temperature of 102. it will only come up positive then. So be really wary of the home testing, because it works sometimes, but most of the time it doesn't. So I think the staff should get a proper drive-through or proper home kit at least once a month, because it doesn't pick up asymptomatic and it doesn't pick up positive case unless you are on the second day of having really bad COVID.
I understood the rapid tests were just that if you had a positive result, that had to be then confirmed by a drive-through or test centre anyway.
But we're using them to pick up the asymptomatic, aren't we? And they literally don't. So I would highly advise that you get your staff to do a drive-through or walk-through. Was it PCR? I can never get it right. I'm dyslexic. Or a send away once a month. Otherwise, you're not going to be covering yourself, because we had 3 staff that had COVID, nothing to do with the nursery, bless them, from their own private lives, and none of them tested positive on the lateral flows that the government's using until it was their second day of being in bed with a temperature of 102. And on the first days when they thought they might have had COVID, I gave them one to test, and I asked them to go to the drive-through at the same time, and they tested negative on them. But the next day when they were ill, I asked them to retest because I wanted to see if it worked, and they come up positive then. So when you need them, it's not brilliant, put it that way. So do test at home.
Can I ask what the reason for recommending those tests once a month? Because if that's the case, you could get tested today and 2 days later actually be symptomatic and be positive. So on the
well,
test,
that's
the
true, but someone who's asymptomatic, will be asymptomatic for a long time. If you want them to do it once a week, you could get them to do it once a week. But that, as Philip said, it's very hard on staff to have to go in once a week and do it. And if they're getting on buses, you might be putting them more at risk. It's great if they've got a car and they're going to do drive-through, and I'm happy to do that. But I have to say, I'm in a different position to you guys now. All my staff are now vaccinated because we've got very vulnerable children. So we went up into the care section because we've got SEN classes, and so they're all vaccinated, my staff now. But
even if they're vaccinated, isn't it? Even if they are vaccinated, they can still get it and pass it on. So that's why it's a good practice to do both, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
They can still pass it on to kids or parents.
Only by 15% though, Adele. There's a 15% chance. So they will still be testing. But I'm warning you, if you don't have your staff vaccinated, the lateral flow are not necessarily going to help you. We've tried 2 different types, and both times the staff with COVID didn't even test positive, and I'm like, because we all thought it was going to be our saving grace, didn't we? We all thought it was going to help us, but that's
so
the
Liz,
case.
You've hit on probably the second sort of side of this already for us, and that's the issue of having all of your staff vaccinated. So how did you approach that? Because we're all reading in the press, there are different feelings, shall we say, about it.
We live right next to St George's Hospital, so we were offered first of all the leftover vaccines, because some of our staff, some of our children actually have parents at St George's, and the booking system wasn't working, so there was leftover vaccines. But after that, because we have a Down syndrome global delay and 2 shielded children and a parent with lung transplant, we come under social care for that class. So my staff had to be vaccinated because the GPs put them forward for those children.
Okay,
so we came under social care there, but normally you can't.
Get how you come up with social care. I'm actually interested though in the moral dilemma of insisting that staff are vaccinated. And my personal view is I agree with you, but I know a lot of people disagree with that. How did you deal with that, Liz? Did you just mandate it, or were staff very happy and willing to take the vaccine?
All were very happy and willing, apart from one. And then I've got more than one setting, so that young lady has gone to the other setting, because everyone has a choice, don't they? No one has to get vaccinated. And I think it's very important in this country that we're democratic, aren't we? We can't force people. But I encourage staff to do so. And again, the staff that did got a day off, they got rewards, etc. And staff that didn't were asked if they could consider working at the other setting because we didn't have shielded children. And it was only one staff who did cross over. The rest of them were really more than happy to get vaccinated, because when you're working with really special needs children who are really vulnerable, and you know the parents who are shielded, you want to do it for them. You wouldn't consider putting those families at risk because they are, as you said before, part of your family, aren't they? You're all part of one team.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you for that. Quite a few people have put some comments on the thread about lateral flow testing and how they're seeing it positive. But if I may, I just want to stick with the subject of whether it's appropriate for staff to have to be not forced, but asked nicely to have the vaccine, or whether they're willing to have the vaccine. And I'd be really interested in other people's views on this, because to me, I think this is a really important question to employers, particularly when we're looking after potentially vulnerable children, but irrespective, youngsters. What's everybody else's view on vaccination for staff? I'd love to hear that.
I know I have a lot of staff who have heard the details about, they don't know whether it affects themselves, they're young women, they haven't had any children yet, and they're talking about they don't want to have the vaccine.
Okay, thank you, Veronica. Anybody else, please? Anybody else got any views on, particularly as an employer, what your position would be as an employer to people who feel they may not want to have the vaccine? That's the sort of bit I'm trying to get to.
I'm in a similar position. I have 80% of my staff that don't want to be vaccinated. What am I going to do? I can't force them. I can encourage them. I can tell them, but there's mixed messages out there, and I can't actually force them. And I'm not willing to. Well, I hope I'm not in a position where I'll have to decide that they can't work in the sector if they're not. If they're not vaccinated, and I don't want to be put in a position like that, because my staff have been with me for 10 years plus, and it's unfair to be put into that position. So from my perspective at this point, because it's still voluntary and it's still optional, it's still guidance, I'm just encouraging them and respecting their decisions.
Yeah, interesting. So quite a few people have put on here about young ladies and the issues around potential future pregnancy. Is anybody taking a different view with regards to vaccination? Anybody being, shall we say, more insistent, or is everybody just taking it as well? It's everybody's, because I appreciate it's a different sector, but we're all reading in the press about Pimlico plumbers in London who are mandating that all of their staff must have the vaccine, and I just wondered if anybody has a similar view to that.
Alan, I actually went into put a lot of effort getting a healthcare professional in to talk to my staff about the vaccine. Someone they trusted, our first aid lady, who they really like, who works at St George's Hospital, and she works as a paramedic. And she came in and talked to them and answered all their questions. I also asked them to speak to all their doctors, but I still feel at the end of the day that it should be their choice. But we did put an awful lot of effort, a lot of information in, and looked at choices of vaccines and everything. We did it as if we were learning the new EYFS, put it that way. We put a huge amount of effort. And I really think that is important. And to look at the religious aspects of it as well, not just the health aspects. And I think by informing your staff and helping them to make that decision, it really has made them all decide that's what they want to do. And to look at it at the children's perspective and the parents' perspective as well. I have to say, our parents have been amazing. They have tested every time at half term. I've asked every parent to test themselves, not the children, but the parents coming to the nursery, because that has lowered our rate of COVID. And because we have very, very, SEN children with real special needs and very vulnerable children, they've been happy to do that. And the parents have been amazingly supportive. And I think through that, the staff have felt supported and wanted to support the parents. So I think knowledge is their best aim. I don't think you can force them.
Yeah, I love it. But I love the fact that you took the proactive education route. And in fact, I love it so much I wonder if you would mind if we actually perhaps did an interview with you outside of this call, and then we could share that with other nursery owners across the sector. Just talk about how you approached it, because I think that's a really useful piece of advice, and we can share that with many more people than are on this call today, and we can push that out to our network. So if you wouldn't mind, Liz, one of our team will give you a shout later and just ask to pick your brains again. So we need to wrap this one up in a minute and move on to the next subject. But again, I just want to, is there anybody who has a different view on mandating vaccinations, which is a very fair view either way, but I'm just interested in if anybody is coming down on the more forceful side. Yes.
Can I just say, oh, sorry, who?
No, go ahead, please.
No, I was just saying, the only reason I probably wouldn't encourage everyone to come forward as a mandatory, because we really don't know the long-term effect of this vaccination. No one can, even this, scientifically, they can't tell you what the long-term effect is. It's a very new thing. And if something was to go wrong in the future, such as fertility and conceiving and all sorts of things, because they can't guarantee what the long-term effect is going to be. So I don't know how I'd feel advising someone to take the vaccination and then have a long-term effect afterwards.
Okay.
Because it's a very new thing, isn't it? So it's about that's just my view.
Marion.
Hi there, I'm a nursery owner and I also have a medical background, was a nurse and a midwife for 22 years. So the whole science of this disease is of great interest to me. I don't think you can mandate vaccines at all, but it's about education. Obviously, I work with a range of ages and of backgrounds and opinions and everything else. And it's very difficult not to get, in my opinion, cross with the anti-vaxxers and, all of that sort of, it is about understanding where people are. And I've had that question, certainly because of my whole midwifery background about fertility and the injection. And what I would say is that nobody knows, because this is a new disease, how COVID, the disease, affects fertility. So the COVID, the disease, is like playing Russian roulette with your life in a way, because you can have, I am one of 4 people who live in my house, my husband and my 2 children. And we all had COVID before Christmas, and it was one of my young daughters who had it the worst out of all of us. Now, if I was to go by all what the science was saying, it should have been my husband. He's male, in his 50s, he's fit, and all that sort of thing. But, it is random. This disease is completely random. So, nobody knows really how the disease affects people. The vaccine has had scientists all over the world, we're talking about experts in their field looking into this vaccine, its efficacy, its safety, its, all of those things. And my personal opinion in this is that people have got to make their own choice. But my personal opinion is that the vaccine is much safer than the disease. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you, Marion. I actually agree with you. I just want to finish the point though. Does anybody have a different opinion? Anybody think that that employers should mandate that people have the vaccine? Just interested if anybody does. Yeah, please.
I think it's actually illegal to mandate it. However, I think, as previous people have said, it is about educating staff, it is about encouraging staff, and it is about empowering staff with relevant, current information. However, just to say that we have a meeting next week because we outsource our HR provision, and we're having a meeting next week because obviously we need to keep our staff safe, we need to keep our client group safe, but also we need to know what legally we are able to do. We're quite fortunate in, I would say that 80% of our staff are pro-vaccination. So it is a minority, but then it's about how we, in the longer term, keep that minority of staff safe. So we're taking guidance from HR in terms of, what we are in a position to be able to do legally.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. I was just interested, as I said, if anybody had the opposing view. It seems like nobody does. Please don't think that means that I do. I don't. We won't be mandating any of the Parenta team to do it. But I was just intrigued, having read about Pimlico plumbers. But I just saw Kerry come on, and it's the first mask I've seen on the call today. And I appreciate everyone's got different views on masks, but we do need to wrap coronavirus up. But I'm just interested on people's views on masks generally, because again, there's such controversy about wearing masks generically, and I just was interested in people's views on that. Anybody have something to add?
I've got something to ask. The thing is that I got work experience, but they stopped me because I work at the nursery. Say if I get vaccinated, will I be still able to go to that, do my nursery as well and work experience?
Okay, not sure I understand the answer. I'm able to answer the question to that. But just going back to the mask, anybody have any opinions on whether all the staff should be wearing masks permanently and masks in the street? Marion, please.
Yeah, I think that is choice. We've been open for the majority of COVID. We closed for a very short time and then we reopened and had a very long COVID-free experience until the Kent variant on the weekend of the 10th of December, and it just went completely nuts for us. And 11 out of our staff members actually got COVID. So the nursery was closed until the 4th of January. And, I had a degree of assurance that our staff were coming back with immunity. So that made me feel much better about everything. But for our staff members who hadn't had COVID, if they wanted to wear masks and visors all day, if that was their choice, that was their choice. If they didn't, they didn't. So, we like every other nursery have, we risk assess. We, as far as we are able to, we have a COVID safe environment, which is reviewed weekly. But having said, and it says all the government guidance for early years say that, we shouldn't be wearing masks, but I think like vaccines, it's got to be choice. And I certainly would not oppose anything, any member of staff wearing a face covering of any sort, if that's what they wanted to do.
Okay, anybody got any views on masks and whether they should be mandatory for staff?
Yeah. Could I say, because we were, sorry.
I don't think you can say mandatory. Again, we've got choices. We've been open all the way through. We had one partial closure at the beginning of the year for one group, but all the other groups have remained open, and we don't wear masks in the nursery. We've got two nurseries close together. I wear masks if I'm going to the opposite nursery, and we have communal areas, but otherwise the staff will wear a mask when they're meeting and greeting parents, and that's it within the nursery. Everything else is about hand washing and cleanliness, and we've managed, and it feels quite normal within the nursery, I've got to say. Yeah, touch wood perhaps, but it's been quite normal, and I think for the children's sake, I think it's been really essential because for their benefit, I think it's right that we don't wear them in front of them. But again, if people want to, they have that choice to do so.
Okay. Does anybody have an opposing view? Does anybody feel that staff should wear masks? Take it, that's a no. And just as then an observation, I actually don't live in the UK. I live in Singapore, and I'm actually in Singapore right this minute. And masks have been mandatory since February last year for everything. And all the children, and all the staff and all the early years children go to school with masks, bar none. And it's mandatory. And it's just fascinating the different perspectives of different countries. But you cannot walk out of your home in Singapore without a mask on. If you get caught, you get fined. It's black and white. And it's just interesting to see the different ways that different people approach it and different governments approach it. Anyway, so unless anybody's got any more questions on COVID, and if you have, please say so. We'll move on. Has anybody got anything else?
Alan, can I just quickly
Please.
ask if you know about nurseries within the Singapore area? Have they had a lesser degree of cases than we have here? Have the masks made a difference?
There is no COVID in Singapore. We've had 28 deaths in total, and in Singapore we have a lot of migrant workers who live in like barracks, for want of a better word, where they're all in dormitories. And we had COVID for the first 3 or 4 months very badly through these dormitories. But as soon as that was stamped out, there is no COVID. Now, Singapore was very different in its shut borders. I have kids back in the UK, and I haven't been able to see them for a year, which is horrific. And I can't get home. The borders to Singapore are shut, bar none. So it's a very different environment. But there is no COVID in Singapore. So just to put context around it, 28 deaths. There's 5.5 million people in Singapore. Probably 65 million people in England. So multiply it by 12. So that's the equivalent of about, I don't know what, 150 odd deaths. So right or wrong, and I don't particularly want to go on either side of that fence, but something that happened here was very different to what happened in the UK. Mm. Does that answer your question, Veronica?
Going back to what you're saying, sorry, UK people, you know, obviously it's a country that's visited, that's more busy compared to Singapore, I presume. I've never been to Singapore, but it's not something that's frequented as much. So the chance of variants coming or spreading within is quite less. So that probably has the well, that's probably why deaths are very low. I might be wrong. With the UK, we've got the European borders that were still open. You know, there's a lot of moving and going, but with Singapore, I think they kind of contained it within it and stopped.
Yeah, I don't want to spend everything talking about me in Singapore, but very, very quickly. Actually, Singapore is the biggest transit hub in Asia, and has significantly more people coming in than the UK does, or going through rather than coming in. And its second largest export is tourism. Tourism has been completely decimated here because the borders are shut. But it's, for whatever reason, again, I don't want to go in the politics of it, but certainly the different approach worked. And you know, everything here is open. You go to a mall or a restaurant or a pub, everything's open, has been since our lockdown finished in June, and we haven't had another lockdown, and everything's open. Somebody just asked, do we have quarantine in Singapore? Yes, we do. So there are a couple of countries that people can come in, not many, and there's 2 weeks quarantine in a hotel, and you're literally picked up at the airport by guys in full PPE, taken to a hotel, and then not locked in a room, but put in a room for 2 weeks. So much like it's happening at Heathrow at the moment, but again, it's been part of our process, well, effectively since we came out of lockdown. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, I want to say, like, say if like your test is negative and you haven't reached Singapore, do you still have to quarantine even you're negative?
Absolutely. It's part of if you come into the country, it is 2 weeks in a hotel, in isolation. There is no debate, no fuss about it. It's just mandatory, and it just happens. Oh, okay. And it's really interesting. A friend of mine, we have a track and trace app, and a friend of mine found out that he'd been near somebody, and he was literally picked up by the medical professional. He was given a call, picked up within 1 hour, taken to a hotel, put in quarantine for 2 weeks, and that's it. It's a very different attitude. Everything here is mandated, and you choose to live in that type of environment or a freer environment like the UK. There's no right or wrong. Anyway.
We've been mandatory with our masks and our shields. We've had these shields, which have been very helpful. Yeah, and we've been mandatory with our masks with our staff if they weren't wearing shields, for changing nappies or getting up close to people. But we've decorated them as pussycats, and our shields are princesses. I've got a different one today, but normally I have gems on the front. So all my staff have had to wear shields or masks, depending on whether we're at green, amber or red. If we're red, we've worn face masks, not shields. If we're in amber, we've worn shields, but we've decorated them as cats or put gems on them and put gems on our shields. And I do think that's protected us. I really do. It has said, you know, we haven't had any huge outbreaks.
Brilliant. I love the decoration, the princess. I just love it. That's fantastic. Okay, everybody, we're going to move on to prepping for the EYFS, but I'm conscious we've already been on the call for 55 minutes. So can I suggest we have a 5-minute toilet and cup of tea break, and we'll regroup on the hour. and then we'll go straight into EYFS. Thank you, everybody, for joining us so far. Speak to you in 5 minutes. Okay, everybody, we're going to kick off once again. Thank you for staying with us. And the topic this time is all about preparing for the new EYFS framework. We've had questions on this from Daisy Roach, Amanda Gilbert, Janine Yadid, Brenda Johnson, and Anna Johansson, I think is how you pronounce it. So a couple of things from our side. Firstly, we've got quite a lot of resources on this coming out. We've got quite a large document coming out, and we've been covering it within the Parenta magazine since December 2020, and we'll continue to do so as we approach or move towards September and the formal launch. I'm aware some people are or some nurseries are looking at it in advance, and I'd be really interested to get any feedback from anybody who is already looking at it or be preparing for it, and just to get some sort of idea and have some conversations with everybody about how and why there'll be these changes. So can I open it up? Has anybody got any experience of this so far, anything that they are able to share?
Yeah. Just to say that we have already purchased the training videos, which were made available from via Nursery World. We've also liaised. We have an online platform company whereby we communicate with parents, send invoices out, track our children, etc. We've been in contact with them to see if they're currently working with the project group that are the early users. So yeah, we're just sort of like trying to keep abreast of any information that is out there to start drip feeding that in for our staff in preparation.
Brilliant, thank you. Have we got any early users or early adopters on the call by any chance? I think that might be a no. Okay, anybody got any specific thoughts on it as we go forward? Again, really interesting to hear everybody's views on implementation or any concerns they have around implementation. Someone has to speak.
We did. Well, I've been on a briefing about it. One reassuring thing was the fact that they've said that although it's in place for September, it's not going to be like it was previously, where if Ofsted inspected you on the 2nd of September, they'd expect you to have it all in place. They are fine with the fact that you'd just be working towards it. So that's quite reassuring, that the change can be gradual. But it sounded quite positive, and it sounded much more focused on just actual interactions rather than paperwork, which is always a reassuring thing to us. I think I'm just trying to find my notes. There was something about maths, to be mindful about what they're saying about maths, because there was a focus on that, so something to look out for, but I haven't looked into it. We promised to do it after Easter, so we're going to focus on it then.
Yeah, well, not like we've all might have had something to focus on over the last few months, is it, Veronica? Nothing important, clearly.
No, nothing at all. I need something to look forward to.
Yeah. Anybody else been on any briefings or have any insight into or views into what's happening here? Nope. Nothing at all, anybody? Okay, well, in that case, I think we won't dwell on this subject matter. I think what I'd rather do is we will send out the documents that Parenta's prepped, as I said, after the call. And reminder, if you don't get hold of the Parenta magazine, we've been running stuff on that since December, and it's free, completely free magazine. You can subscribe, just parenta.com/magazine, and you can get that in your inbox every single month. And we'll continue to add depth and colour to that as we prep for September. But if there are no more issues on EYFS, and clearly not, let's talk about funding, particularly overpayments. So we had 3 requests on that from Shoba Windsor, Desan Duke Billingi, please forgive me if I pronounced that wrong, and Pat Akawenuk. Again, forgive me if I pronounced that wrong. So Any of those people, what was the specific question that anybody wanted to ask on that? Don't all speak at once.
Sorry, just going back to the EYFS, just quick question before I go back. When is that releasing again, the new EYFS?
September.
September, sorry, I thought so. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Right.
Okay.
Liz, you were going to take me out of that little abyss of silence there and help me.
Well, funding just doesn't match what we need, does it? We take a lot of funded 2-year-olds, and you know there needs to be a change. This £6 isn't going to put it. Our rents have gone up hugely in the church halls because the church isn't getting any income from parishioners coming in, and they've put our rent up by 50% in one of our settings. 50% up, just like that. And we kept, you know, they wanted more, but we managed to hold it at 50%. I think going forward, there needs to be some change. I don't understand where parents who earn over 50,000 each need to get funding. The funding needs to go to the free children, I think. There needs to be some sort of reform on this. And has anyone got any ideas on how we can do it? Because, you know, we're always at the moment being capped. We can't charge top-ups, we can't do this, we can't do that. And, you know, we've got qualified staff who've got degrees. They deserve a good pay rise, especially having worked throughout the whole of lockdown. Does anyone have any thoughts about that? Anyone on funding and staff salaries, etc.?
I don't know how it would change. I mean, can I just say, the 30-hour funding fascinates me. How any it's a family, each person can earn 100,000. So as a family, you can £200,000 and they get 30 hours free. I've never understood it. I've been in the process since the beginning of the early learning grant, or whatever they called it, 40 years ago. And originally, we used to get the grant and we would give that grant to the parents. So if you got £100 a month, you'd give them £100 and it came off your fees. And that was the perfect point. And then somewhere down the line, somebody decided it had to be 3 hours. And then it all went toodles up. And I don't, and I've seen the earlier sector battle since then, since the 80s or whatever it was. And I don't know why they can't go back to just a grant, because I think that would be applicable. Then the grant could be applicable to, you can then charge the rest of the fees accordingly. I mean, we don't get £6 an hour for 2-year-olds, we get £5 something. But I don't see any change. It's been fought for centuries, and depressingly, I've never seen any change within that. And never a light at the end of the tunnel to suggest that they might accept a change. I don't really know what we can do.
I agree, but I do think while we've got the MP's ears, because we've been going towards Parliament lots, haven't we, as a team of early years workers, to say we need vaccines, we need PPE, we need testing. I think we should try and challenge them, because the vulnerable children do need these places free at point of contact. Of course they do. But like we've just said, the 30 hours parents, they're multimillionaires, they can pay. You know, it's before we would have got 6,000 a year, wouldn't we, for a place, for a term time only. And now they're capping us at 4,000, and we can't pay our rent, we can't pay our staff what they deserve. And it impacts on the education of the children as well, but in the way that the resources we buy and the training we can give to staff, etc. I mean, we rely heavily on Noodles now, and Family, the platform FAMLY, are really good, and on you, Parenta, thank you for training our staff, etc. But you know, it's getting closer and closer to the crunch, isn't it, where we will not be able to provide anything without proper funding. And I just wondered if anybody is going to get together to try and combat this as a group, or what we can do.
Well, the reality is we have done. I was one of the original members of Champagne Nurseries on Lemonade Funding, and had been part of that group until I moved abroad some time ago. But I've been up to DFE, I've been in the Palace of Westminster, I've been to Cornwallis House, arguing our collective position. I've been in the Privy Council chambers listening to previous childcare ministers, Robert Helfton at the time, who was utterly useless. I've been in the seminars, sorry, Phil, I've been in the seminars where we had representation from NDNA, Preschool Learning Alliance, and all the others, including Champagne Nurseries, in front of Liz Truss. I've been to represent, not Liz Truss, the Labour Shadow Minister, I can't think of her name. Anyway, but I've been to Cornwallis House to meet with Liz Truss before that. And I've been to the Department of Education with Champagne Nurseries. And it is like talking to a brick wall. The ministers, as you would expect, trot out the same nonsense that they always have done. And it's almost like it's on rote. It's almost like it's, this is your answer. And you know, there are some very clever people in Champagne Nurseries when it launched, very astute and articulate people. And we were giving some very comprehensive arguments and statistics to the ministers. And their answers were frankly pathetic. They would just repeat the same nonsense about the investment as a whole that was going into the sector. And actually, a lot of us who started that campaign became very disillusioned. We're up to nearly 22,000 people on the Facebook group now, which is a pretty astounding group now. But going into these things and talking to the civil servants, and the civil servants were effectively translating the government or the minister's direction. But it was utter nonsense. You go there and have articulate arguments, and it was just a flat no.
What was the spelling of your Facebook group, please?
Champagne Nurseries on Lemonade Funding. We'll put a link in the group.
Thanks, that would be helpful. Do you think it's time to get the parents to go up to Westminster to ask on our behalf? Do you think we could get the parents to do it as well?
Well, there were large groups of us that went up, and you know there are huge representations from small nurseries, chains of nurseries, and large groups. And not only did we do all of that, but we also, we met with NDNA, we've met with Preschool Learning Alliance, every bloody thing you can think of, excuse my French, but we as a group were involved in, and it was just soul destroying because the answers were always the same. And as always, we are investing this amount of billions into the sector. So if I'm really honest with you, Liz, I don't sense that that's the way that's ever going to change. I genuinely wish it would. I don't sense it is.
We were talking about this as a group of Wandsworth independent nurseries. We have been saying that everybody's been up, the Montessori's been up, NDA's been up, Early Years Alliance, but something has to give because we cannot continue. But there is a point here to say that they have to meet their amount of people that they have to do the 2-year-old grants and 3-year-old grants. And if we refuse to take 3 places for the 2- and 3-year-old grants, they would be meeting their quota. So I have spoken to Wandsworth about it, and they have put it up by 50p an hour. But I think we still, as a group, need to put huge pressure on them because they rely on me and they rely on other nurseries like myself and our kindness to take the vulnerable children in, to take the social worker children in. They're a lot more work than your ordinary children. And at the £6 an hour, there just isn't enough staff to do, the meetings and meet with SALT and everything, unless they give more money. And I think if we keep putting pressure onto them and saying, look, we need to take that quota of children for you, otherwise you're not meeting your government targets, there is a way forward in that way a little bit. But when you look at Chelsea and Westminster, they get £6.80 an hour per child for the 3-year-olds, whereas other places only get £2.50, don't they? And it's just wrong, totally wrong.
I think you hit the nail on the head, though. The problem is that nursery owner managers are nice people. And as nice people, sometimes, we all try and work with what we've got, and we try and find solutions with what we've got. Again, I don't want to politicize this in any way, but just referring back to your point, all of the local authorities are responsible for delivering to childcare. The only way, in my opinion, the only way it will change is if collectively in each local authority you stop taking it. But that's not an easy thing to do. and the implications of it are huge. And that's probably beyond the debate that we've got time for today. But it's, in my opinion, it's a national disgrace. And we need the sector, sorry, we need the press to pick up on the sector's woes and start championing it. Sorry, Veronica.
Yeah. So can I ask? I mean, I do agree. I mean, ours is actually getting worse because our inclusion funding, for example, and we have a lot of children who have additional needs who need pretty much one-to-one, used to be based on an hour-to-hour basis, and they've now changed the format of it, and now that's halved the inclusion funding that we get. So I've got children coming in for 30 hours a week and they're getting possibly about 10 hours equivalent. It's shocking. Can I ask you about the Champagne Nurseries? Because I know the campaign very well, but I'm always interested. It's on Facebook, and our nursery owner is a businessman with a lot of connections in businesses, and he's never heard of it because he doesn't go on Facebook. Is there any way of extending it to somewhere like, the professional side, so somewhere like LinkedIn, which has a broad range of people professionally, and again, like Facebook, it's kind of a web of contacts, but I'm always quite fascinated because the Facebook people generally are the people in the job, not the other people that we want to hear about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. Facebook has pivoted massively in the last 2 or 3 years from being a tool about sharing baby photos to a tool which is putting groups of people together. And the reason it was launched on Facebook is because the vast majority of our sector are in that space, and the vast majority of other people.
Is it not the other sectors that we want to get their support from? We know that we're in a difficult position. We want other people to understand it.
Agree with you. So, but that was the logic of it at the time, because and that's how we've got 22,000 people on there. And but I think that's a really interesting point, Veronica. I'll suggest that I'm not actually part of the leadership team anymore, but obviously I still know the guys very, very well, and I shall put that point forward for you. I think it's very worthwhile.
I just always think it's the people not in the sector that we need to hear about this.
Yeah, but if you've got a nursery owner who is in the sector, he or she should be jumping on and seeing what's going on there, would be my suggestion. But I will certainly take back your point about LinkedIn too. Any other? Let's widen this. Any other comments on it? We all accept it's a disgrace. But anybody got any? Taking Liz's point, have you got any bright ideas on how to change it?
I just had a recent conversation with a good friend of mine. She is actually a beauty salon owner, and she took it upon herself to go on a massive letter writing spree to every MP who she could get time with. And she's actually started to make some headway and is getting actual time now, and has been invited to, speak to ministers or a minister about it. Perhaps if we were to format, and Alan, and I've been listening to what you've been saying there about your involvement in this, but if you could perhaps format a letter and send it to everybody on your mailing list in the sector and ask us to forward it individually to our MPs, it may begin to tip the balance. Just a thought.
Yeah, I love it, Phil. I think it's a good idea. We have seen thousands and literally thousands of letters going to MPs across the country. What we haven't done, however, is done it in a sort of concerted mass event and tried to get people from every single borough and every single county to send something up collectively to their MPs. And certainly we haven't done anything recently. So we did it in the all the previous MPs for childcare. So as I said, we met Robert Helfront, and I can't pronounce his name. Anyway, Nazid, or was it? Whatever his name was. But obviously now we've got our friend Vicky, who always tells the truth. And I didn't say that, did I? But there's no reason whatsoever why we couldn't repeat that now. And I think that's a really shrewd idea. So let's
We just did exactly that for the lateral flow test, which is why in Wandsworth, every single manager and every single teacher asked for the PVI to get to the lateral flow test with the schools. And we met with 5 of the MPs on a Zoom, and we did get that. So I think, Alan, it would be really worth doing it. And your lovely man from Merton as well. I think we should do it again, and we use something called Write to Them. And if you use the company called Write to Them, they have to answer via the Write to Them website, and it tracks whether they answer or not. It's called Write to Them. And we all wrote the same letter, but we bombarded them. Like with lockdown, we got enough time, haven't we? So we bombarded them. Every single one of teachers, every single one of the heads wrote letters to all the MPs in their borough and the other boroughs of their settings, and we did get the lateral flow through that, just for the PVIs, because they weren't going to do PVI lateral flow.
I love that, Liz. Yeah, we let us give some thought to how we can approach that, and we'll re-engage with Champagne Nurseries as well and see what we can do. I certainly think there's nothing lost whatsoever in trying again and again and again and again. And the more, we all know this, the more noise we make, the more likelihood, if you've just proven it, Liz, the more likelihood that people will listen. I'm still flabbergasted, if I'm honest, that we're in this state and that we are still having the same debate. I think with you, Veronica, you said it came in the 80s, and we're still having it, and it just doesn't work. And I think the other thing to be aware of, and this is really, really important, but I haven't got the recent stats in my head, but I've got the stats from, I think, 2017. And this is from the NGNA survey in 2017. It looks at all the nurseries who complete their survey. 49% of all nurseries in the UK, sorry, in England, beg your pardon, in England, in the 2017 stats, made a loss. So only 51% were break even or made a profit. So half of all nurseries in England are making a loss. Well, if half of all nurseries in England are making a loss, and taking Veronica and Liz's point about the fact that rates are going up or funding's staying the same more or less, you don't have to be a mathematician to work out that this problem can only get worse. What happens? There's 23,500 nurseries in the UK, about 18, 19,000 nurseries in England, and about 12,500 preschools. So Village Hall based preschools. So 23, 12.5, 30, 35,500 childcare providers, not including childminders. If 50% of those are not making a profit, then 50% of those are likely to go bust. What happens, taking Liz's point, what happens to every local authority's mandated childcare provision if 50% disappear? You know, it's not a particularly difficult calculation, is it? We are all screwed, if you excuse my French, and more importantly, the local authority is too. So I think
they're the points that we need to put into that letter that we all send out. They're the issues, aren't they?
Okay, let us
facts behind facts.
Let us see what we can do to help support that again, and we'll, as I said, we'll re-engage back with Champagne Nurseries and again with NGNA and PSLA, etc., and see where we go. Good. Anything else anybody wants to highlight on that? Anybody? The most emotive subject we have?
No, just to say thank you. And I think we should all get together on your Facebook. Thank you very much for doing that, because driving forward is so important. And just feeling that you're supported and you're not the only one out there.
Yeah, I think another sideline, Liz, what you mentioned earlier regarding your 50% rent increase, we were similarly victimised at our sites in Richmond and in Merton. It's the cruelty that you go through with the rent is horrendous as well. And for the past 10 years, year on year, our profitability has been shrinking. And it's linked to funding, it's linked to how landlords operate. And I just want that, anyway, that's probably a whole different discussion probably for another day. But it's
Philip, what's the name of your nursery? And I'll get hold of you because you're very close to us.
Yeah, it's Building Blocks.
building blocks. I'll get hold of you, Philip, and we'll have a chat on that one.
Lovely. Okay. Cheers.
Because I had a way out of my 100%. I got it down to 50% rise. So I'll share that with you.
Thank you.
I think your point, though, Phil, is absolutely fundamental. Look, by definition, with PBIs, and by definition, there is nobody to bail you out. And in the day, as a private provider, if the money doesn't come in, you are going to go bust. There is no if, but, or why. And that's dreadful because that impacts so much on the children, on the staff, on your own personal finances, and it's wrong. It's morally wrong that anybody should be put in this position.
And the weird thing is, sorry, but kind of it's horrible to end on negative points, but the thing that frustrates me most is when they talk about the provision that we have to provide qualified teachers, high level standards. Well, give us the money to do it, and then we'll happily do it. And yeah, it's horrid because it's they expect one thing but give another.
I agree, Veronica. But enough soapboxing on this subject matter. We've been asked to talk about maintaining relationships with parents via Karina Bergen, Jeanette Woodcott and Graham Cobb. Anybody want to open that one for me? Maintaining relationships with parents. Any thoughts on that, please?
Do you mean parents of children who are attending or not attending?
I presume with children who are attending, that's certainly, yeah, I've only got that one sentence, maintaining relationships with parents. So I was hoping one of those people who are on the call wanted to answer the question.
Could I just say, we use this app called the Tapestry, and because of COVID, we minimize the face-to-face contact. So we encourage parents to share anything that they do with their children. We share information that they do here. We don't transfer materials from the setting, or they don't bring in anything. So they put the pictures up on Tapestry, and just as much as we put the observations, we encourage parents to do put up observations as well. And that actually has helped a lot, because we feel that they're not missing out on their vital, like communications, as well as, information and observations. So it's like you're kind of connecting with the parents through that app. And I think it's almost like we've actually stayed in contact during this COVID time. So the Tapestry was a really big hit for us. And that's helped us to maintain.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we use Tapestry as well. But what I would also say is, I mean, we've done parents' evenings recently. We've done some by phone and some by Zoom. And if we have had any issues that are particularly sensitive, we have made arrangements to have a spare room, distancing, wearing masks, and bring parents in, because you can't not have that with some things. I mean, we've got to be realistic. You can't talk over again in a garden over something sensitive. So we have had parents in as well, and it's been fine. We've kind of had the contact.
Good.
There's an ironic point that we found. We used to have the parents' evenings every term, and the attendance dropped and dropped and dropped until it was the point of, is it worth it? How much are we going to work? So we did the Zoom parents' evening 2 weeks ago. Phenomenal success. Probably our best attended. And
it is ironic, isn't it?
Childcare in the evening and that sort of thing. Just a thought. Yeah. Might be the way.
It's fascinating.
Well, I don't know whether other groups have noticed as well. I mean, one thing that we found is that we were worried about parents not coming into the setting and how the children would settle, and I'm telling you now, I'm not changing it, because the children have been much better.
I'm not changing it either. I love it. They don't hobber around.
Yeah, the children have been amazing.
Yeah, this is the way.
We all know it's the children, it's the adults' issue, usually not the children's issue, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's a really fascinating thing. At every one of our settings, it's the same. Our managers love this drop off outside, don't come in, where we were a complete encompassing, all in, come on in anytime, open door policy. Not. Yeah,
but it's funny though, as you set up your nursery, if you build it, you're your key thing is we have an open door. Everybody have an open door policy. We welcome you all the time. The managers love seeing the parents and chatting to them. And we've only just found out that by not doing it, we offer a better service and the children are better off. Incredible, incredible. And then there's just Butler's Red. I don't know if you can all see it, but she has something called a focus week where we get them all, I presume that means the parents to contribute and invite them to come in and discuss. Eleanor, can you add a little bit more to that for me? Can you come off mute and just put some meat on the bones for me? Don't know where she is. Mute bottom left. I can't even see you. My screen's not big enough.
Can I just quickly say on the point of children not coming into nursery, I mean, obviously we're all going to be looking at getting our children ready for the next step, which is school, you know, for those age appropriate children. And I think parents dropping off and picking up from outside of the nursery is actually preparing them from that as well. So when they go to school, that's going to be much better. And I would agree with everyone who's spoken about children settling better and everything. And we definitely don't want to go back to having adults in the setting. It's worked much better. Our children have settled much better. And as I think you said, Alan, it generally is a parent's issue, not the child.
Yeah, so Marion, how will you communicate that with those mums and dads who aren't very good at letting go? Is that a subtle enough way of putting it? How will you convey that?
Right, well, we, during, when we had a temporary suspension of service from March to May, and we kept in touch with our parents through Zoom meetings and telling parents how things would look when they came back and explaining why. Obviously, everything, you know, was dominated by COVID secure buildings, minimizing face-to-face, etc., etc., etc. And we actually did for our children that we accepted over the summer. We had meetings outside with parents, and for those, I mean, and we discussed. We would do home visits and, you know, all of those things. Well, obviously, all of that has stopped. And we would explain to parents, you know, what we would have done, but now this is how we have to do it. And we would get them to preempt their own anxieties before we had those meetings. So what are you most anxious about, you know, leaving the child or, you know, whatever. And it's about talking those things through with them beforehand. And, you know, it really hasn't been a problem. It really hasn't. I mean, I have felt, you know, as a mum, you know, if my child was going to nursery and I hadn't even been inside the building, my anxiety levels would have been very, very high. So I think it's being able to appreciate that and then trying to alleviate those anxieties. You know, we do Tapestry, so we do a lot of virtual stuff. We've done virtual stuff, virtual visits, virtual meeting of the staff, you know, all of those things, all the things that everyone's been doing because we can't go to the face-to-face. And we really haven't had a problem with over-anxious parents or over-anxious children because children do settle much better.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it?
Well, we have found that we've had to do visits. We've had a number of parents who needed to look at the building, so I do the visits at the end of the day. Once all the children have gone. Yeah. So we have managed to do that, and that does help a little bit, I think.
Does anybody use virtual tours? Sorry, does anybody use virtual tours to show the building round? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And lots of people talking about Tapestry. Thank you, Julie. She uses Footsteps, and Dayshare, which is Parenta's version of the same thing, which is clearly better than Tapestry. But no, I'm just biased. Clearly didn't say that. I just want to ask an obtuse question, if I may, but it's really important. As you know, a lot of what Parenta does is vocational training, which means we send assessors into your buildings. And since lockdown, we've not been sending assessors into your buildings. We've been trying to do it all remotely as best we can. I'd be intrigued on people's views about assessors going back in at the appropriate time. Do you prefer the Zoom calls and keeping adults who are not part of your staff out the building, or just open conversation? I'd love to hear your views.
We'd like our assessors back in the building. That's fine. We actually settled in parents and children in a settling in tent outside. So I think when your assessors come back, we will start off with them in the garden and in a tent outside so that they can do one-to-one, say watching, teaching, or with our students. We would like that. But I think using the outside tent has been an amazing thing to do, which has meant that we've had parents tested before they settled in children. And then we sent that member of staff out with 2 or 3 children to settle in the tent and then brought them into the nursery. So we haven't just, you know, kept them at arm's length. We've been able to do that warmly. And yes, I think it's important for students to have face-to-face with their assessors as well. And it's important that the assessors come in and assess their work, because otherwise going forward in the future, we won't have students who are as well qualified as the ones that we've got. And we've used you a lot, Parenta, and we've liked it very much. We've had very positive experiences with our students, thank you. Most of my students are older. They're mums who've come to it later in life.
Thank you, Liz. Of course, it's not assessing anymore, though, because we've moved to standards, and it's actually now teaching rather than assessing, which is a slight movement. But Marion, you had something to add there.
Yeah, I would say yes about getting assessors back in. I think it would work having a combination of both, though, the Zoom and the online, you know, the hands-on. I think Zoom has its place, absolutely 100%. You know, the fact that we can all be on this today, and you know, we're all in all parts of the country and indeed the world, and I think it saves on travelling time, you know, all of those issues that can be problematic for people. So I think Zoom does have its place, but I think from a student's point of view, I think having their mentor in from, you know, providers like yourself is absolutely vital. I think because it's just another dimension of learning for them. You know, they've obviously got their mentors within the setting, but also, you know, there's nothing like a new pair of eyes on something.
That's really good feedback. Thank you. I think that, so I can't answer for anybody else, but for Parenta, it will be a hybrid model. So it'll be some Zoom, and we will be running sort of teaching over Zoom, and then coming in and doing the teaching directly, and some of the assessing that we do will be face to face. But for my perspective, for Parenta's perspective, we won't be doing that for a reasonable period of time. I appreciate you guys, for the schools going back in March. I won't be asking our assessors to go back in probably until sort of June, until we have a level of confidence that they are safe, and those who want the vaccine have had the opportunity to have it. That would be our position. Okay, anything else, anybody on maintaining relationships with parents? Clearly incredibly important subject. And I love the fact that everybody's using the electronic systems like Dayshare, Footsteps, Tapestry, etc. But anybody else got anything amazing that they have learned? Okay, well then let me share with you, if I may, something I learned on the previous call. We had a lady on called Deborah Fulshall, and she's been a client of ours for since the beginning, I don't know, 18 or 20 years. And she had solved the conundrum that I had not been able to find a solution to. And the conundrum that she solved was how do you have phones in the setting to be able to take pictures of the children without any risk of those pictures escaping. And her solution is so obvious, as good solutions always are. And it's just something that I hadn't seen. But all she'd done is bought older mobile phones with cameras on them and taken the SIM card out. Just taking the SIM card out and made sure that the Wi-Fi was locked, and she or one of her trusted staff was able to download those pictures. And I thought that was just such a completely obvious solution, but one that, you know, many of us just wood for the trees and just haven't seen. Anything else on that one, people? All right, thank you. Lots of thank yous, and people are having to leave, and I understand that, so thank you to them. Supporting parents who are working from home and homeschooling. Natasha McDonald and Jeanette Woodcock asked us to address that. Has anybody got any thoughts on that? I mean, I have to say, anybody who's homeschooling whilst trying to work, in my view, deserves a medal at the moment. Let's not pretend it is not without its challenges. And I think it's almost unsung heroes, parents who've got kids at home and they're trying to to deal with them and trying to work. You know, let's not pretend that's not a massive challenge. Has anybody found any unique ways of supporting parents doing that?
We've tried to send things from Tapestry, but the very conscious of the tripwire being that if you use the word homeschooling, these are early years children, and B, send stuff that's too descriptive, it sounds too educational. So what we're trying to say is just, you know, read a story or go for a walk and see what because we want to promote the play-based learning that we do. So we're just very conscious, and when the children are coming back in preparation for school, we're very clear to say we're not talking about learning letters and numbers, we're talking about learning to share and learning to take turns and socialize, because the children have lost all of what we would normally be spending time doing for them. So we're just really sensitive not to be encouraging parents to think that they have to educate their children formally.
Okay, good. Anybody else? We've got quite a lot of information in the Parenta magazine about this, and I've been running this since last March. Again, if you haven't got that, it's parenta.com/magazine. But there are quite a number of articles from industry experts in there talking through their ideas. But I'd warmly welcome any other thoughts on how we better support our parents whilst they're doing it.
Sorry, and what I generally just do is just phone the parents up, because we don't have that many children who are staying at home from the setting. I think about 5 children who are off. So I would generally just give them a call at the beginning of the week just to see how they're getting on. I just keep them updated as to what we're doing in the setting, if we have like loose topics or, you know, themes. And we just say, like it was Chinese New Year's before we broke up. So we just said, look, arts and crafts is also promoting fine motor skills. You can design a, you know, Chinese New Year cards and things like that. And I just obviously share what we're doing in the school in our setting, and then if it's not a mandatory, they don't have to do it. If it's an optional, if they want to do it, they can, but this is what we're doing in the setting, and then I just leave it up to them, because you know, some parents have said, no, we are actually getting the older siblings together and, you know, helping the younger ones to sit together and learn together, and they're doing cooking and baking, and they're sharing all that on Tapestry, which is fantastic. And it's also for safeguarding reason, just to see how they are, mental well-being. And sometimes they come on the phone, the children come on the phone as well, and they want to have a quick hello and everything. And I think it's really nice. Just a phone call sometimes is all that, you know, parents know that you are thinking about them and they're not forgotten or anything. So that actually works for us.
Great, thank you. Anybody else on that?
Jumping on there, I've been quite flexible with our parents in terms of the hours they've taken for childcare, because some of them are working from home and then they've got school-age children that they're homeschooling at the same time. And being rigid, well, we only open at this time, and you know, your child previously was only doing this session and that's all, you know. So I've kind of been a bit more flexible. So if parents have said, well, my child's Zoom class starts at 8:30, so can I drop them off at 8? And can I pick them up at a certain time instead of as long as it's within their funded hours. We have 80% of our children are funded. So, you know, and if it's a child that's paying, then as long as it's within the hours that the child has taken, and because our uptake is at about 60% at the moment, I can be flexible. So I have been flexible, and parents have appreciated that.
Great, very good. I think it's so important, the rules as flexible as we can be, isn't it? At the end of the day, none of us have ever prepared for this. None of us have ever been through it before. Every single one of us as leaders are learning. Every single one of us as members of staff are learning. Let's not pretend it hasn't been without its challenges. All right, so I'm going to move on, because Phil asked us to talk about insurance for business interruption, and I was worried we wouldn't get to this one. And I think it's a really important subject, because I think we've all been let down. I keep using this strong language, don't I? But I think we've all been let down by insurance companies across the spectrum. Phil, do you want to grab the subject for me and give us your views on it, please?
Sure. I mean, from the very outset, we went for the highest level of insurance cover we could possibly. in terms of business interruption any way we could. Then we took out the extensions when they were offered to cover pandemic and illness and everything that you could possibly think of. And then, even reading the policy, it was clear we were covered. But insurance companies just say, no, we interpret our wording differently. This was something that is obviously taken to the High Court and then subsequently the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court mandated how the wording of 8 major insurance companies should be interpreted. And I put in a subsequent reclaim about the loss of revenue that we had, and basically a 3-sentence reply by email is no. Almost the computer says no response. So I've actually said I can't sit here and just accept that. I've approached a lawyer and asked him to assess our claim on the basis of the High Court and Supreme Court rulings and our policy. His response was, yes, of course, he would do an assessment to see if we had a shout to go back to the insurers. But he also mentioned the fact that other nurseries who have business interruption insurance of any sort should get together, and because a class action approach is far more effective. So I didn't know how to do that. How on earth do we contact other nurseries, other small businesses even, who do it? And I just wondered if anybody else has had a similar experience and who'd be interested in taking it further.
That's really interesting, Phil. Thank you. Certainly, we can help rally some troops, and we know enough nursery owners and managers if we wanted to do a class action. Just help me understand, because when I looked at Parenta's when we had to shut, it was interesting. Are they claiming force majeure? Are they claiming act of God? What is it? What is the criteria that they are using to dishonour the claim? And look, let's be honest. All insurance companies, it's everything's designed to look fantastic and not be there when you need it. But it doesn't get much more basic than this, does it?
No, exactly. I think in our case, what their interpretation was, meant that nobody would ever be able to claim based upon, at the time there was no testing. So they said, the insurers, you had to have had a confirmed case at your setting via medical checking. There wasn't any at the time. And you had to have been closed by a public health body. Well, the initial down closure.
Not or, is it, Phil?
Sorry, say again.
Case and be closed by a public body, not or. Because otherwise, Marion said she had a group of people in her setting would be able to claim, but it's the and, is that the issue?
Exactly. So it's the and or. And the Supreme Court came down on the side of nurseries who said, actually, you don't, to say about having somebody with a confirmed case is completely unfair on the basis that there was no testing. Somebody who went away with self-isolating because of symptoms is how the Supreme Court applied it, which opens up for so many more claimants after that point. So that was one of the key issues, is the fact that people who went off to self-isolate with symptoms without being tested meant it was much more available. The other one was about the public health body closing you down. Well, that had, in effect, happened.
Not by one, that's what it was.
Yes, but they had said, no, you haven't been closed down because you weren't told specifically. So the ruling again it was actually the High Court was, no, you had been closed by the statement of the government at the time. So the number of issues that are just so unfair.
Well, it's not unfair, it's immoral.
Yes.
It's immoral. You opened up, your opening gambit there was we took out the best insurance we could to protect our business if something went wrong beyond our control. And something went wrong that was beyond your control, and then the insurance company wasn't there. So my view on that is immoral. I wish I had a clever answer. I don't. But how can you write?
Hopefully, my lawyer will come back.
Yeah, but why would you bother to have insurance? You have to have public indemnity insurance, but why would you bother to have business interruption insurance going forward? Marion, you had your hand up.
Yeah. On the whole insurance thing, I contacted my insurance. My insurance is back in March, and read, you know, my insurance policy, and it did say that if we had to close due to coronavirus, and I think they actually mentioned the word. But when because they basically said that I couldn't claim anything for any closures. What they actually said was this was a new coronavirus, and at the time of when it was issued, it wasn't covered for this coronavirus. So I said, well, the very fact that it's a new coronavirus, you couldn't have insured against it anyway. Anyway, to cut a long story short, and I'm with my insurers, is probably half the people on here were all with the same insurance. They were not playing ball in any way, shape or form, because so I then said to them, how are we to mitigate this going forward if indeed I'm going to stay with you? And I've been with them for 20 years. And they said, so I said, do I have to try and name every potential virus that is going to be coming out in the next 10 years to us to have that put on for you then to insure against it, which of course is a completely hypothetical, ridiculous thing to say, but I was trying to highlight the hypocrisy of what the conversation we were having, really. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I didn't know coronavirus was going to happen, and equally neither did they. But they're called an insurance for a reason, but they weren't happy with it.
I'm gonna lighten the mood, but have you all seen the skit from Michael McIntyre, where he plays Michael McIntyre on one side and then some sort of a fortune teller, and he's looking at the crystal ball, and he talks around the fact that the crystal ball is giving him advice of what's going to happen in the future, and it talks about the fact that he wouldn't have a job, and he'd have long hair and not have a haircut, and he'd be furloughed, and all of these words. If you haven't seen it, everybody, find it on YouTube. It's 3 or 4 minutes of your time. You'll be laughing stitches. It's very, very good, but it does really highlight, perhaps more than anything else, what an amazingly complex journey we've all been on in the last 12 months. You know, none of us could have foreseen such a profound impact on every aspect of our lives. And Phil and Marion, I agree with you. It's the insurance company, that's what you take it out for. But anyway, perhaps Parenta team, we could look at doing some sort of survey on this to our mailing lists over the next couple of weeks and see what sort of sentiments we get, and then we could take it there and possibly go down the route that Philip has suggested. Simply, I don't know what the link is. I'm afraid I don't know. Type in Michael McIntyre COVID or something and see what you can find. Anyway, it's time to wrap up, everybody. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. We were really unsure how sort of open mic kind of conversation would work. As I said at the beginning, we've done webinars every month since COVID occurred last March, where we've had speakers come on and give their views. So it was really interesting to see how this worked today, and I hope you all found it valuable. Certainly, I find it really fascinating to hear different views, and so thank you to everybody who contributed. It really helps us to assess what we're going to do, and I hope it helped each of you to hear different ways of doing things. I think my favourite comment is Liz. I know she's gone now, but the cat masks and the princess visors. I thought that was fabulous. Thank you for joining us. We will be sending out a copy of this recording later on today. We'll add links to the CPD courses that we've got on mental health. We'll be adding documents that we've got for our learners on mental health. There was something else that we were supposed to add and I've completely forgotten, but I'm sure the ladies who are on here from Parenta, the magazine link is what I should have said, and the link to Champagne Nurseries. We'll add all of that onto the stuff we send you out today. Again, if anybody wants a copy of the book, we can't send out hard copies at the moment because the office is shut, but we're happy to send out soft copies. And go on Amazon, see some of the reviews, and see what you think. And if anyone wants to leave a review, as long as it's positive, that'd be brilliant. If it's negative, just tell me. But that's it. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the ladies at Parenta who've organised it today, and for everybody who's spoken. I really appreciate it. Have a safe time, people. Make sure you look after yourselves and look after your staff. Take care. Bye-bye.